Digital nomads all over the world have stopped traveling. But isn't being a digital nomad supposed to be great? You can instantly upgrade your standard of living or live the same for a fraction of the price. You can constantly go on adventures, you can make friends from all over the world, and you can fill your life with unforgettable experiences instead of just stuff. All those things are awesome, but there's much more to the story, and social media tends to really hype this lifestyle up and kind of hide the bad stuff. I've been traveling as a digital nomad now for over 5 years, and let me tell you, there have been plenty of times when I wanted to call it quits. Here are some things that may make you change your mind about wanting to become a digital nomad, because it's definitely not all rainbows and fairy dust. And if you're already a digital nomad, let me know in the comments what you think about these. By the way, they say that there's dolphins swimming at the beach I'm walking to right now, so let's see if we can find some. The first is pretty obvious, and that's that you're gonna be lonely. You're gonna miss your friends, you're gonna miss your family if you like your family, you're gonna miss birthday parties and weddings and other milestones, you're gonna miss your comfort foods, and if you're outside of the digital nomad bubbles, you're gonna miss people speaking your language. It doesn't matter how fluent you are in the language of the country that you're living in, it's just not the same. Every time I visit home, I remember how good it feels to be able to joke around and be sarcastic with people. That's something that's really hard to do with friends in another language. And yes, you will meet awesome people as you travel, and you'll be able to develop super fast and deep relationships and friendships because you have so much in common. But these are also temporary friendships because nomads come and nomads go. It's also important to realize that the people in your old life will move on too. Sure, you may be able to maintain your closest relationships via video calls and things like that, but that really isn't the same either. One of the most eye-opening and kind of depressing times for me was when I came home after traveling for a couple years, and I realized that all of my friends had moved on with their lives. I don't know why I expected to come back and have everything be exactly as I left it, but I guess that's just not the way things work. It makes me sad to think of all the close friends that I lost touch with. The next thing you might not realize is that depending on where you're traveling, the locals might actually resent you as a digital nomad. They might not want you there, and in some places, they'll make this pretty clear. Now, there are many different reasons for this, but one of the biggest reasons is digital nomads who earn in a stronger currency can come and pay more for rent, and so they skyrocket the rent prices, and since locals earning local salaries can't compete, they get driven out of the city center. Add to this the fact that nomads often can't bother to learn about the local customs and culture and language, and you have a recipe for resentment. Boa tarde. That said, in other places, locals love the nomads, but they also might see you as a big fat sack of money. Next, it can be hard to find a good place to live. It's hard enough to find a place to live in your own hometown, but now you have to do it in a foreign country, sometimes in a different language, and then you have to do it over again and over again and over again every few months. Yes, Airbnb can be helpful, but you usually pay a pretty big premium for using their platform, and a lot of times the reality is much different from the pictures you see on the listing. The best way to find good deals is to search on the ground once you arrive, and this is even easier if you have local contacts. But if you don't book ahead, you always risk not being able to find a good place once you arrive, and then you have to get stuck settling for a sucky place as a last resort. Traveling to a new country without a long-term place already lined up can be too nerve-wracking for some types of people. And in general, finding good digital nomad accommodation is way more complex than it is to find normal short-term tourist accommodation. Since Wi-Fi is essentially our lifeline, we have to instantly rule out any place that we see that has bad Wi-Fi reviews. And even if a place doesn't have any Wi-Fi reviews at all, it might be too risky to book that place. Sure, you can use a data SIM or travel eSIM like I do and tether to your phone, but a lot of times when you're staying in apartment buildings, the cell signal doesn't reach inside anyways, and so it's always a risk. You also have to discard places that look like they don't have a comfortable desk to work at. And if you're traveling as a couple like we do, then you'll need to find 2 comfortable places to work at. I can't tell you how many awesome looking places that we've had to pass on just because of the chairs and the tables in the pictures. There are many days where I just miss the simplicity of being a normal backpacker, where I could just pop open the Hostel World app and choose whatever place had the most reviews and have a place to stay in 3 minutes. If it sucked or was uncomfortable or had bad internet, it didn't really matter anyways because I'd be moving on in 3 days. Speaking of being uncomfortable, as a digital nomad, you're just gonna have to get used to this. And at first, it might not seem like a big deal, but after a while, it really starts to wear you down. Yes, it's true that you can get 100% more bang for your buck by moving to countries with a more affordable cost of living. You can either get an instant lifestyle upgrade or keep your lifestyle the same and save tons of money on accommodation. The problem is, no matter where you stay, it's never gonna feel like home. If you're like us, you'll often find yourself in places with janky pots and pans and knives for cooking. And if you cook a lot, you'll either have to keep rebuying stuff every place that you go, or lugging cookware along with you, or just suffering with the dented, scratched pans that the Airbnb host left you. Beds won't be as comfortable as your bed at home. Couches will be rock hard and lumpy. If you don't have a washing machine, you'll always be at the laundromat, or if you're like me, washing your clothes by hand in the shower every night. This is especially true if you're traveling carry-on only and only have 4 outfits to begin with. And probably worst of all is that you'll rarely find as comfortable of a work from home setup as you can have at home. Seriously, I used to think co-working spaces were a huge waste of money when you could just stay at home and work from your Airbnb. But after years of working in weird positions, in rock hard chairs, in tables that are too tall, now I get it. Right now in the place we're staying, there's not too many places that we can work outside of our apartment. My body's killing me, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that I often daydream of having a soft, cushy, huge couch that I can sink into at night and rest. First world problems, I know, but it's the truth. Sure, it's exciting to see new places. Just this past month, we floated along a dreamlike dune world. We've worked with monkeys, and we woke up to some pretty epic views. But every time you move somewhere new, you have to spend hours researching destinations, comparing prices, figuring out transportation, and finding comfortable accommodation. Do this every few weeks, and it gets exhausting. Then, even after you've sorted out all the logistics, you still have to get used to your new home. You have to learn where the good places to eat are, where the best spots to visit are, how the city works in general, and you have to make new friends and connections all over again. It's like hitting the reset button every time you arrive in a new destination. As a normal traveler, planning out your trip is usually one of the most exciting parts of the process. But as a digital nomad, after a while, it just starts to feel like another job, like just another thing that's on your never-ending to-do list. But on the other hand, if you want to slow down and stay in a place longer, you still have extra work to do. You have to deal with other issues like paperwork and extending visas and doing border runs and figuring out taxes. Whichever way you travel, you're adding a lot more extra responsibilities in than you would have just living normal life. It's also difficult to keep up with your routines because when you're constantly on the go, it's really hard to have structure in your life. Your work hours change, your work setup changes, and let's not forget the FOMO of wanting to see all the places there is to see in your new destination. As a digital nomad, you're exposed to new people and experiences and attractions all the time. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement and lose focus on your work or personal goals. Sometimes I feel like I'm burning the stick at both ends. When I'm working, I feel guilty about not going out and exploring the destination while I'm there. And when I do go out, I can't fully enjoy that either because I feel guilty about all the work that I have stacking up back home. I think this is especially true for nomads who work for themselves and have control of their own hours. Maybe it's not as bad for those who have a normal remote job and set hours where they can clock in and clock out, but with that you lose some freedom too. Next, and this one is a big one, and that's that travel can lose its luster after a while. And I think this happens to both digital nomads and long-term travelers like backpackers. When I first started to feel this, I thought I was crazy or ungrateful or something, but then I realized that there's an actual term for it called beauty fatigue. If you cram too much beauty and excitement into too small of a time period, then things that normally would feel amazing to you start to not feel amazing anymore. You might arrive at your 10th waterfall that you saw in a month, and you see everyone else's jaw dropping in excitement, and you're just like, meh, it's okay. It also seems like everyone has different thresholds for this beauty fatigue, and I've heard some people even say that after just a 10-day trip through Iceland, at the end of the 10 days, they started to feel like, meh, okay, that's cool, but I've seen it already. Then I've talked to some other travelers and digital nomads that say they don't start to feel this until after 18 months of travel. Whenever this happens to you, and it will eventually happen, you need to reset your system. Sometimes this means settling in one place and having a travel detox while you focus on work, or other times it might just mean having a change of scenery or culture. For example, moving from mountains to beaches, or moving from Latin America to Asia, or moving to a hot climate to a cold climate. Now, before you leave all depressed with your dreams shattered about becoming a digital nomad, let me offer some solutions that I found to these problems. But first, I'm curious about what your experience have been living as a digital nomad, so leave them down in the comments to share with everyone below. Okay, so solutions. The first one I found is to find ways to travel without flying. International flights often require visas, and visas require hotel info and onward travel information. To choose flight dates, you need to figure out ahead of time how long you need in a country to see all the things that you need to see. All of these things force you to plan further and further into the future. This is not only more stressful, but it also makes you less flexible. If you have everything planned out for 6 months and then you have to change one of those plans, it could throw a wrench into your entire itinerary. Case in point, we're about to spend almost a week backtracking from Pipa to Natal to Fortaleza, Fortaleza to Sao Paulo, all because we decided to change our plans, but we already had a non-refundable flight bought. Traveling by land, on the other hand, requires much less advanced planning and is less stressful. Without set travel dates, you can be more flexible and go with the flow. We're almost to the beach. Hopefully we can see some dolphins. The second solution is to learn tricks to make friends and meet cool people while you're traveling. As I said, digital nomad life can be pretty lonely, especially if you're traveling as a solo nomad. Luckily, there are some tricks to instantly meet cool people wherever you go. This video is getting pretty long already, so make sure to subscribe and I'll make an entire video on how to meet other nomads while traveling. The third solution is to focus on easier destinations. Choose destinations that are set up for digital nomads, at least when you're starting. I'm talking about places like Bali, Chiang Mai, Bansko, Medellin. The bigger the digital nomad community, the easier the transition will be. At first, I was totally against these places because I wanted to experience the local culture, not nomad bubbles. But the truth is, they do make the transition easier and less stressful. For some reason, we always seem to find ways to make our lives more difficult, like trying to be a digital nomad in Egypt or the Sahara Desert or the Maldives or national parks in the middle of nowhere. And while I've loved all of our adventures, these are often the places where I tend to feel the most burned out. The next solution is to consider becoming a dabbling digital nomad, basically having a home base to return to. This is what we do in Colombia. We have 6 months in our home base in Colombia and then spend another 6 to 12 months out traveling in different places. It also just helps to travel slower. Traveling slow might mean different things for everyone, but for me, that would mean between 3 and 12 months per destination. This solves a big chunk of the problems that we talked about in this video. You don't feel exhausted from constantly planning and moving. You have time to make deeper connections so you don't feel lonely. It's easier to find a better place to live for cheaper prices, and if you have to invest in something for your kitchen or a chair or something, you won't feel as bad because you're going to be there for a long time. You can maintain healthy routines and you can avoid beauty fatigue. It sounds like the perfect solution, but for us, it's easier said than done. We always seem to find an excuse to add one more place to our itinerary, and then one more, and then one more, and then one more. In the end, it's a constant learning process. There's something funny I've noticed, and that's that when you change to a lifestyle like this, at first, all of the awesome positives seem to eclipse any of the negatives. But as the months and the years pass by, those positives just start to become normal, and then there's nothing to eclipse those negatives. For example, if you move from the US to a country with a cheaper cost of living, at first, you can't believe how awesome it is. You can cut your living expenses in half and save tons of money. You can pay someone to cook and clean for you full time. You can eat out for every single meal without breaking the bank. You can afford to pay for fun activities and hobbies all the time. But eventually all those cool things just start to feel like normal life. Then all the negatives start to poke out their ugly heads, like the discomfort, the paperwork, the loneliness. This is when people quit. But what they might be forgetting is that as soon as they go home, all of those positives that they're accustomed to will disappear. The cost of living doubles, you're back to spending hours cooking and cleaning each month, and there's less time and money for fun activities. So just remember that every lifestyle has pros and cons. For example, I 100% miss the comfort of my home sometimes. But then I think, how many people can say that they walked down to the beach at lunchtime so they could go kayaking with dolphins? You gotta take the good with the bad, no matter which path you choose, and just remember that nothing is permanent. When you need to switch things up, just switch them up. Either way, the odds of enjoying yourself and not burning out are way higher if you know what you're doing. And this video explains everything you need to know about becoming a digital nomad from A to Z. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for our best bite-sized travel lifestyle tips. All right guys, see ya, bye-bye.